Hey, welcome to the Pitch Black unboxing show with Judy and Colin.
Hello.
And we have today the fantastic Dr. Yvonne Thompson. Now, Dr. Yvonne is our cover story for our second issue of Pitch Black magazine, and we're absolutely delighted to have you with us, Dr. Yvonne. Welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be with you and to be supporting you in the launch of your show. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have been. We're honored because, of course, I actually met you and heard of you through Judy, because many moons ago she was doing the flowers, I believe, for FBO.
Oh, wow. Well, that was many moons ago. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I have to say publicly now, thank you so much for that opportunity.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
To come and do flowers.
We're all about inclusivity and, supporting our Black businesses. So, and look what you see with the reward is I'm here today. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's like full circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You supported me both in the flowers and also one of the forums you had. I had my stained glass on exhibition as well. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
So both professionally and personally, you've certainly impacted us. But what we wanted to do is just give our viewers an understanding and an overview of who Dr. Yvonne is. And so if we go right back at the start, of course you were born in Guyana and you came here to the UK when you were much younger. So just tell us a little bit about the experience.
Not much of the much,
Oh dear. Let me try not to get myself in trouble today, but do please tell us a little bit about the formative years in both Guyana and the UK.
Okay, so I arrived in the UK when I was 6. So I do have memories of Guyana, but not many. And I'm ashamed to say I've only been back once. So that is on my bucket list to make sure that I go back and visit. But yeah, I am very much the child of immigrant parents who were invited to the UK by the Queen to help rebuild the motherland, so to speak. So my parents packed up themselves and their 6 kids to come to the UK early in the 60s. Thinking we'd be welcomed with open arms and, expecting petals to be thrown on the floor as we walked off the plane and, all that sort of thing. But of course, as we all know, as immigrants, it was a very different story, very, very different story. And as I usually say, one day I was running around the sugarcane fields in Guyana, and the next day I'm here in the UK, cold, miserable weather, foggy, never seen fog before, wondering what the hell was going on, and getting angry with my parents for taking me out the sunshine to this place. But, I always knew in my mind and very confident that they knew what they were doing. And, it's turned out for the best. We literally arrived at the time when it was still legal for landlords to have notices that we all know now, no Blacks, no Irish, no dogs. But despite this, they found somewhere for us to live, a 2-bedroomed, not even 2-bedroom, 2 rooms, probably in the worst house, in the worst street, in the worst part of London, Battersea, right under the power station, which was still live at the time. And, you know, as I say, the rest was history. My parents worked around the clock like immigrants do. I think immigrants are the real entrepreneurs because we turn up quite often not knowing the language, definitely not knowing the culture, not understanding the politics, but we make our way through. And my parents did that for us. And, you know, as I say, the rest is history. Until I turned up, went through school, you know, the usual racism. It wasn't university at the time, it was polytechnic for me. I was training as a state registered nurse and wanted to be a doctor, but the medical part of it didn't materialize, but I do have 2 doctorates, PhDs. But, you know, I mean, you've read my story. It might be better if you kind of ask me what it is you want to know, because otherwise I could talk for an hour.
It's all good. It's all good.
What I'd like you to share with all of our viewers is, having arrived then in the UK, formative years, lots of things that are so different around you. Who and what sort of experiences then became those early role models?
Well, you know, I have to say my parents. I have to say, well, back in the 60s, we did not have an Oprah Winfrey. We didn't have, I'm not even sure what a British role model, you know, what would that term role model didn't exist. So the only people that I had to look up to were my parents. My dad was a policeman in Guyana. When he came here, he had to dumb down his expectations to make sure we got fed. So he became a plumber's mate at St. Thomas's Hospital. But that was a good move because that was a job for life. Those do not exist anymore, you know. So that was a good thing for us. My mum was, I think she had 3 jobs. She was doing part-time jobs outside of the home. Then she had the job of looking after us. And then she had the job of looking after my dad. I call her a domestic engineer. She made everything work. She made everything work. And as I said, you know, she had the 6 kids, and sometimes you might say 7 if you included my dad, to look after. So those, my mum was, for me, you know, a real dynamo. She was just everything that I needed to instill definitely a work ethic. Being the youngest of the clan, I would always be up at the crack of dawn with my mum when she got up to make sure everybody was fed and watered and got out of the house in time for school and work and everything else. So even to this day, I am part of the 5 o'clock club. I actually wake up around about 4:30. I tend to get up between 5 and 5:30. And then my day lasts as long as I need it to do what I need to do for that day and get ready for the next day. So, you know, just as a, for instance, yesterday I was up at 4:30 because I had a lot to do and I knew I was going to be out of the office most of the day. And then I had a reception in the evening. I didn't get home until 11:30. So it was 12 o'clock by the time I got to bed. My body clock woke me up at 4:30. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to spend an extra hour in bed. And that went on a little bit, and I actually woke up at 6:30. So, you know, but hey, that was a special day. That was a different day. And here I am now.
Wonderful.
I must confess, Dr. Yvonne, I tried the 4:30 thing yesterday because I needed to prepare for a presentation later on in the day.
Yeah.
And it was fine until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So
yeah,
I'm not sure I'm going to do it again in the
house. You get the 4 o'clock dip. You do get the 4 o'clock dip, and that is the thing. They say, what's it like? Really high thinkers get that dip around about 4 o'clock, and you either have to go for a walk, or you know, some people even have a a power nap during that time, 20 minutes, half an hour power nap, and it just takes you through to the time that you needed to go through to. So that's the trick.
Yeah, I was in bed by 7, so I think I'm all right now.
I very rarely get that. Very rarely get that chance.
Wow. Now, your first foray into the world of work, having decided that the medical career wasn't for you, was in the music industry. Do please tell us a little bit about that? What was your job? What was the industry like at that time? And how has it changed from today?
Well, my foray into what I call a job, well, I only ever did it once. I only ever had one job. And that was working at CBS Records. And that was after having my daughter at the age of 19. I started CBS probably about 18 months later, I can't remember now. But that was my first job. I was there for 7.5 years. I was in the marketing department. I applied for a job to go up. No, I started in the press, the regional press department. I applied for a job in the London press department, didn't get that. I applied for a job in the marketing department. I got that. I applied for a job in the promotions department. I got that, but it was never upwards. It was always sideways. But in a way, that was good, because even though I didn't move up, I moved around and I got a lot of relevant experience. So, I had press, I had regional press, I had a bit of London press, I had a radio, I had marketing. So it was, a good 330 experience. And I really decided that after applying, I think 3 or 4 times to move up, that was never going to happen. So I thought the only way for me to move up is to move out. And that was when I started in my passion, which was marketing and PR. I started the first Black-owned PR company. And because of that, I met Neil Kenlock and Patrick Berry. And was the only woman on the board of 10, 9 men and myself. And we started Choice FM, which many of you may know. And I also started the first Black Women in Business network, which has evolved over the years. In fact, this year it's our 25th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Can I ask what the plans are for that?
Well, later in the year, we're going to be doing what we normally do, which is a 2-day summit. Normally it's a week-long summit, but we're going to hone it down to 2 or 2.5 days. The first half day, we will be in the House of Commons, and then we'll move over to the House of Lords to celebrate and launch the summit with high tea in the House of Lords. And then we'll have the 2-day summit. And then the evening of the 2-day summit, we will have the awards. And the awards is planned as a reception at Kensington Palace.
Wow.
Very nice.
Very nice. Sounds good. Sounds very, very good.
That's the plan. That's the plan. Now,
if we know anything about Dr. Yvonne, she has a way of making plans come to fruition. So
I have a way of making things happen. However, I cannot control world pandemics. That's the only thing that might stop me.
True. Okay. So you were talking about being one of the founding directors there of Choice FM, which many of us grew up on and grew up with. The first Black radio station, or the first radio station that played Black music on rotation. What was that like? We see the impact and the outcome, but what was that like getting that going?
Well, we applied 3 times before we actually got the license. And then when we did eventually get the license, it was just for South London. We had the power of, I think it was one 1 watt or something ridiculously small. We didn't even have the strength of a light bulb for us to go on the airwaves. Whereas other stations like Kiss FM had a kilowatt, you know, so 100 times more than we did. But having said that, of course, once you're on the airwaves, you can't stop the airwaves, you know. So we were getting people as far as Milton Keynes, I think, or Aylesbury, and calling in and saying, oh, we're listening to this, we're just about picking you up, it's brilliant. So, you know, the marketing, the area, they can't stop us from the airwaves, but they can stop us from the marketing perspective. So we could only market in South London. I think it was Wimbledon to Lewisham and Croydon to Kennington or somewhere like that. So that was, we could only talk to people and sell out advertising within that district. And we still survived. We still survived. We went on to grow our network. We bought we won a Birmingham license, which was much bigger than the London license. And then later on, there was WNK in North London, and then we bought the license for WNK, which gave us a London-wide license.
Brilliant.
And that's how we survived. And then, of course, 15 years later, you know, we decided that, or not decided, we knew we weren't going to grow, and it wasn't sustainable, because most of our clients were small Black businesses who did not have, they would never be able to afford to advertise on big stations like Capital Radio and those stations, which is why Choice FM was an essential part of the entrepreneurial or the Black business growth. And even though many of them could, it still wasn't enough for us to either maintain what we were doing at a good level, or there were lots of other political things that were in play that made us couldn't survive. And those other politics were things like some of the big radio stations had what you call sales houses, and they would do the national sales. So when we started being either approaching or being approached by some of the national sales houses, the big station said, if you sell for Choice FM, you're going to lose our customers. So we were locked out of the national sales. But they had a master plan, because they knew, one, we were always told, you know, especially when I was trying to find money to invest in Choice FM. And the only way I was able to do that, I became the greatest salesperson ever and persuaded my parents to remortgage their house to give me some money to invest. And I knew the burden was on me to make sure that it worked. You know, and it did, thank God. But I also knew that when it came to time that we needed to look for more investment, and we were trying to find other ways of making sure we could carry on. You know, a lot of people were saying to me, oh, Black music will never catch on. Now that was it was the biggest joke. But then
I hope you told them.
They were saying Black music would never catch on, but then they stifled a Black radio station so they could buy us out. And as you know, before we sold to Capital, we were going to sell to Chrysalis music that owned Heart and all that sort of thing. But just as I think about a week before we were due, or 2 weeks before we were supposed to sign to Chrysalis, that was when 9/11 happened and everything, you know, the world changed.
Yeah.
And then after that, it took us about another 3 years or so to get something back in play. And we eventually sold to Capital Radio for probably half of what we would have had prior to that, you know.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. You know, it's now known as Capital Extra.
Yeah, I just was about to ask that. That's now known as One Extra, and it's pretty much
Capital Extra. One Extra is BBC One.
Ah,
One
okay.
Extra is BBC. Choice FM is now known as Capital Extra.
Okay.
Because black music is not going to catch
on.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's completely turned everything upside down, because before you could hardly hear any black music anywhere. Now you can hardly hear, unless you tune in specifically to a rock station, you're not going to hear that music on daytime mainstream, you know. So for me,
throughout the whole of the music industry, you know.
So for me, you know, choice really changed black English culture, or UK black British culture. Well, British culture, never mind black British, because, you know, one of the things that we found out when we were doing our research was that you have these diaries sent to different, and people fill them out. And of course, when they sent it back, there were more white people listening to Choice FM than there were black people. Yeah. And the mainstream radio stations knew that, and they began to realize that black music is not just listened to by black people. There's a lot more white, well, and because of, you know, because of the demographics, you know, there are far more white people in London than there were ever going to be, you know. So, yeah.
Okay. And so the end, or not the end of Choice FM, your transition away from Choice FM kind of brought you into doing something which you've always been passionate about, which is gender equality as a whole, but gender equality specifically. And so you started this thing called the European Federation of Black Women Business Owners, or EFO, in 1996. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, well, that was whilst we were still part of Choice FM, and that is how the European Federation of Black Women Business Owners, that's really how we grew, because I had access, affordable access, to be on the airwaves, to promote the fact that there is a Black Women in Business network. Because for me, I found that doing what I did in PR, I didn't really come across many other Black women in business. And in fact, how the Federation started was that, I think it was in 1995 or 96.
Yeah,
a delegation of Black women came from the US, and they were surprised, one, to find, oh, there's so many Black people in London. They didn't realize, but you know, they think Black America is the world, you know, and they're very, you know, well, they did at that time, not anymore. And so they were surprised to find that there were Black women in business. I was introduced to them, and the next year they invited me to the States to one of their events, and it was an absolute inspiration when I walked in through the doors of, I think it was the Hyatt on Capitol Hill or somewhere, something like that, in Washington, to this room just packed with Black women, powerful Black, I mean, I still get goosebumps every time. That is a memory that's etched in my mind. And that particular event, Hillary Clinton was speaking at. And at that event, I became the first international awardee, the first person to receive an award outside of the US. That just shows you how, you know, how focused they were on the US. And then, of course, I got my award in February, and by the end of that year, because February is their Black History Month, and by the end of the year, October, I started the network and started promoting it, and as they say, the rest is history. But more recently, I expanded it because, you know, right now we're all talking about equality and diversity, and for me that goes both ways. We've got to be accepting to the mainstream as we expect the mainstream to be accepting to us. So probably 5 years ago, I changed the name to Wintrade Global. So Wintrade is women in trade. Because if you're in business, you better be trading, otherwise you're not going to be in business. And then again, we expanded our reach. We weren't proactive. We weren't stopping white women from joining our network, but we weren't proactively reaching out. When we moved to Wintrade, we started accessing, you know, the white world, so to speak, because for me, the only way we can truly gauge our success in business is, to a certain extent, having a comparison to the mainstream. We will also learn from them. They will learn from us. And it means that we're all sitting at the same table, or we're all in the same room, sitting at the same table, hearing the same information at the same time. Then it's up to the individual to decide. That's what I call equal opportunity, because then it's up to the individual how they actually use that information. And also, you know, women, doesn't matter what country you're in, what color you are, there is something that's going to cross over, you know, and it's really interesting to know that they may be in a different country, they may be a different culture, they may be a different color, but it's amazing how you find that there's so many similarities in what women go through. And that's, you know, that's what Wintrade is all about.
I mean, that's really interesting to hear the developments. Your experience of going to the States and being so inspired and a first recipient of that award there, and my experience coming to FBO over here in London, you know, having the opportunity to be able to I did the flowers for either side of the stage. And I remember kind of like walking in the first time I did it and thinking, wow, this is absolutely massive, you know, and just seeing the tables there. And it was just so encouraging, so inspiring, you know, to have that network and that support to say, no, you know, other people are progressing and moving forward and making those efforts as well. And, you know, and then also where, you know, we get the question about the magazine being called Pitch Black. Oh, is it just for Black people? Is it all about, you know? And what we say is, no, it's for everyone from us. You know, so yes, but we need to celebrate and support one another, but we're not excluding anybody.
Exactly. And it's also for those who are interested in our culture. If they want to know about our culture, they read your magazine.
So that, you know, we can break down the barriers. You can see a little bit more about us, know a little bit more about us, and break down those fears and anxieties and share.
Dr. Yvonne, we are just so delighted to have you on the show, and of course on the cover of our second issue. And we are just so proud of you for all that you've done. You know, we at Pitch Black, we fondly refer to you as the UK's Black First Lady. And you know, we do that for a variety of reasons. Number one, you have been a pioneer in PR, you've been a pioneer in radio, you've been a pioneer in networking, and you've done a number of firsts for the UK and Black UK specifically, but also in terms of the stature and the fondness that we have for you. We really do believe that you are the UK's Black First Lady. So We just want to, you know, celebrate you,
Salute
cheer you on,
cheer you on.
and, you know, hey, we're here to just big you up, as they say on the street. So we thank you for all that you've done.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what I didn't say in the, and I'm not sure if I did actually in the end, but what I hadn't formally announced was that apart from, and I'm not sure if I put, I'm sitting here in my office at the Black Cultural Archives. So I'm now chair of the Black Cultural Archives, and I really want people to come and see what we're doing. You know, maybe we can do something in conjunction with your magazine around the Black Cultural Archives. But I do also chair another charity called OKRE, OKRE, which is Open Knowledge Research Across Entertainment, and that's part of the Wellcome Trust. But apart from receiving my let's start from the beginning. Apart from receiving my CBE in 2003, 18 or 19 years ago, or whatever it is, 19 years ago, I have gone on. So I've got one CBE, I've got 2 doctorates, I've got 4 fellowships, and you may now have just seen a new post-nom, DL, which means as of the 15th of February, I'm now a Deputy Lieutenant for Greater London. Now, so for those in your audience who doesn't know what that means, it means that anytime, it's by royal appointment, and it means that anytime any of the royals visit, predominantly for me, South London and more so Lambeth, but it could be anywhere across Greater London, that I could be, I'm not necessarily always, but I could be called upon to support the Lord Lieutenant Kenalisa, who is a black man, the first black man to hold that post. And you might want to interview him for your next magazine. I'll make the introduction. In 300 years, of that post, he's the first person of colour to hold it. And he's doing as much as he can, you know, to make sure that people of colour who are of that ilk has access to that, you know, that level of responsibility within the royal circles.
Fantastic.
So that is where we are at the moment. But you know, my biggest wish is that you come down and do something on the Black Cultural Archives as well.
Okay. That would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. But
Scout's honour, we promise.
Dr. Ray, can I ask, you know, because we could talk for the whole day, you know, so just listening to the progress and what you've achieved, and you know, you rise, we rise. It's really wonderful. But can I ask you know, the sort of encouragements you'd give to a younger self, a boy and a girl on the street, you know, wherever they are, whatever level they're at, what encouragement you would give?
I always say that to kind of refer back to my landing in the UK, you know, literally, and people think it's a story, but it's true. We literally arrived in the UK with one suitcase each, or as we used to call it back in the day, a grip.
Yeah.
You remember that, a grip?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We literally arrived with one each. And I always say my parents carried an extra burden for each of their children, because they carried, knowing that they were uprooting their whole family and bringing them here, they carried a backpack of dreams for each of their children. And I am glad to say that all of our family have managed to fulfill those dreams for my parents. Even though they're not alive to see it, I'm sure they're watching down and whispering in our ears, you better remember, you know, all of that. You know what parents are like. So, and I can only say that, you know, we started off very poor, literally 2 rooms and all the things that go with it, you know, no inside toilet. We would be washed once a week in the garage. You boil the bucket full of water, go out in the back and get your ears scrubbed and everything else once a week. And, you know, compared to where we are now, in many, many, many ways, the young people of today have got it so good. They've got it so good. And I do say, if I can do it, you can do it too, because you have much more access at the click of a button, much more access. I mean, there's a lot more competition as well, but it's comparative to, you know, where I was, I'm going to tell you 60 years ago, that, you know, you can, if all I can say, if I can do it, you can do it too. We had no role models, I mentioned that earlier on, other than our parents. And I don't call them, my mother wasn't a role model. My mother was a real model. We are real models, because it's not a role we're playing.
Love that. Love
it's,
that.
you know, you don't, you know, it's not a practice. It's, you know, it's real. So for me, you know, I think one of the things I say as well, find your focus and focus on your focus.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just because everybody has a different focus. Everybody has different dreams. Everybody has different, you know, ambitions, but find what yours is, focus on it, and keep believing.
That's brilliant.
That's awesome.
Dr. Yvonne, thank you so much. Thank you for being a trailblazer, a pioneer, a role model, and a real model.
Real model, I love that.
I love that.
Great.
We celebrate you. So thank you so much for being on Pitch Black Magazine show. And we look forward to hearing even greater things from you and for you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.